Australia exposes American wildlife panic intro. Hookie was working the front desk at a hotel in Cairns when an American couple checked in at 3 p.m. Standard procedure: room key, Wi-Fi password, breakfast times. Then the husband asked if we had a wildlife emergency hotline. I asked what kind of emergency. He said general wildlife. I explained that Australia has normal emergency services. He wanted to know the specific number for snake removal, spider extraction, and crocodile alerts. I told him to call 00 for actual emergencies. He asked what qualifies as an emergency. I said if you're being attacked. He asked if seeing a huntsman spider counts as being attacked. I said no. He asked if seeing one in the same room counts. Still no. He pulled up an article titled Australia's 10 Deadliest Creatures and asked if we had antivenom in the hotel safe. We did not. He asked if that was legal. I told him we're a hotel, not a hospital. His wife asked if the hotel was far from the safe zone. I asked what safe zone. She said the area without dangerous animals. I explained that's not really a thing in Australia. They requested a room change to the highest floor because spiders can't climb that high. We were a 3-story building. They took the 3rd floor. If you already see where this is going, you're the kind of viewer who actually gets cultural psychology. I break down these travel myths and mindset mismatches every week. If you want more of this kind of clarity, you know what to do. I watched them sprint from the car to the entrance. There was a gecko on the wall. They didn't come back down for 6 hours. Last month, I gave a tour of Sydney Harbor. American woman asked if the water was shark-proof. I said no. She asked why not. 45 minutes of my life I'll never get back. I was working at a wildlife sanctuary near Brisbane when an American family arrived for the koala experience. The father asked if the koalas were declawed for safety. I explained that koalas have claws naturally, and we don't remove them. He said that in America, all interactive animals are made safe. I told him koalas aren't dangerous if you follow instructions. He asked what the mortality rate was for koala encounters. I said 0. He said that seems statistically unlikely given their claws. I explained that koalas are docile and mostly sleep. He asked if they're sedated. No, they're just koalas. He wanted to know if we had a waiver for animal attack liability. I handed him the standard photo waiver. He read it 3 times looking for the injury clause. He asked to speak to someone about the inadequate safety protocols. I was the head keeper. He asked if I was certified in wild animal combat response. I told him I have a degree in wildlife biology. He asked if that included defensive training. The man wanted safety goggles for his children. For koalas. He took the photo while standing 6 feet back with his arms fully extended. The koala fell asleep during the encounter. He later wrote a review saying we were reckless with dangerous wildlife. The hind koala's name was Steve, and he ate eucalyptus for 4 hours that day. I was driving an Uber in Melbourne when I picked up an American tourist from the airport. Normal small talk until we hit the highway. He asked why there weren't any animal crossing zones marked. I said we have wildlife warning signs in rural areas. He said he meant in the city. I explained that Melbourne is urban and doesn't have much wildlife beyond birds. He insisted he'd read that kangaroos were everywhere in Australia. I told him that's true in the outback, not downtown Melbourne. He said his cousin visited Australia and saw kangaroos daily. I asked where his cousin stayed. He didn't know. He spent 10 minutes explaining that if Australia has kangaroos, then they must be everywhere because that's how nature works. I tried to explain population distribution. He said I was downplaying the risk. He asked if I carried rude deterrent in the car. I did not. He suggested I should invest in some for passenger safety. He asked what happens if a kangaroo hits the car. I said it depends on the speed and size. He asked if my insurance covered exotic animal collisions. I told him kangaroos aren't exotic in Australia. He said they're exotic compared to American deer. I gave up. We drove past the Yarra River. He asked if there were crocodiles. I said no, wrong climate. He said he'd seen crocodiles on Australian documentaries in rivers. I explained those were in northern Australia, over 2,000 kilometers away. He asked how I could be sure they hadn't migrated south. It was 15 degrees Celsius outside. We arrived at his hotel. He gave me 3 stars because I lacked wildlife safety awareness. I was working at a pharmacy in Perth when an American man asked where we kept the anti-venom. I asked, what kind? He said, general anti-venom. I explained we don't sell anti-venom over the counter. He said that seemed dangerous given Australia's reputation. I told him hospitals stock anti-venom for actual emergencies. He asked what tourists are supposed to do in the meantime. I said call an ambulance. He wanted to buy anti-venom just in case, like he'd buy pain medication. I explained that anti-venom requires proper medical administration. He said in America you can buy EpiPens. I told him that's different. He asked how it's different. I spent 5 minutes explaining venom types and treatment protocols. He asked if I was a doctor. I said I'm a pharmacist. He asked if Australian pharmacists are trained differently than American ones, because this conversation wouldn't happen in Florida. I told him Florida doesn't have the same venomous species as Australia. He said Florida has alligators and snakes. I agreed, but said the medical systems are different. He asked to speak to the head pharmacist. I was the head pharmacist. He asked if there was an American pharmacy nearby. There was not. He bought sunscreen and left. 20 minutes later, he came back and asked if the sunscreen protected against skin-penetrating insects. I told him to apply insect repellent separately. He asked why we don't make combined products. I had no answer that would satisfy him. I was working at a car rental agency in Darwin when an American couple wanted to drive to Sydney. I pulled up the map and showed them it's a 4,000-kilometer drive. The husband said they had a week. I explained that's 3 to 4 days of driving minimum, not including stops. He said they're experienced road trippers and once drove from New York to Florida. I told him Australia is larger than the continental United States. He laughed and said that's impossible because America is huge. I showed him the map overlay. He studied it for a full minute. Then he asked if the map was to scale. Yes. He asked if we were using metric kilometers to make it seem longer. I said a kilometer is about 0.6 miles, so it's actually 2,500 miles. His wife did the math. She looked concerned. He asked if there were highways the whole way. I said yes, mostly. He asked about wildlife on the highways. I told him it's common to see kangaroos, cattle, and sometimes camels in the outback. He stopped me at camels. I explained Australia has wild camels. He said camels are from deserts in the Middle East. I said yes, and Australia has deserts. He argued that Australian deserts can't support camels because they're different deserts. I did not engage with that logic. This is exactly why I make these breakdowns, because cultural perception often beats reality. Most people laugh at this stuff. I decode why it happens. If that distinction matters to you, subscribe. His wife asked if the car had animal collision reinforcement. I said it's a standard sedan. She asked what happens if they hit a kangaroo. I said the car would be damaged, possibly totaled. They asked if insurance covered that. I said yes, but there's an excess fee. He asked how much. I told him $2,000 to $3,000 depending on damage. He asked if we offered wildlife avoidance training with the rental. We did not. They decided to fly to Sydney instead. Best decision they made all trip. I was teaching English in Adelaide when an American exchange student asked if school gets cancelled for spider season. I asked what spider season meant. She said the time of year when spiders are most active. I explained spiders are active year-round in Australia. She looked horrified. She asked how Australians go to school then. I said we just do. She told me in America, they have snow days for bad weather. I said Australia has extreme weather days sometimes for heat or fires. She asked if there are spider days. No. She said there should be because spiders are more dangerous than snow. I did not argue that comparison. She asked what the protocol was if a redback spider entered the classroom. I said we'd remove it or call maintenance. She asked if teachers are trained in spider removal. Some are comfortable doing it, some aren't. She wanted to know if there's a school nurse with antivenom. I told her to go to a hospital if bitten. She asked how long it takes to die from a redback bite. I said deaths are extremely rare, almost unheard of in modern times. She said almost wasn't comforting. She asked if students carry EpiPens for spiders. No, that's not how spider bites work. She spent the rest of the day checking under her desk every 5 minutes. The next week, she found a huntsman in her locker. She screamed so loud we had to evacuate the hallway. The spider was relocated outside. She asked to transfer to a different school with better pest control. She lasted 3 months in Australia before going home. Said the wildlife anxiety was affecting her grades. I was working at a beach resort in Gold Coast when an American guest called the front desk at 11 p.m. She said there was a possum on her balcony. I asked if it was inside or outside. She said outside on the balcony railing. I explained that's normal. Possums are common here. She said it was staring at her through the window. I told her possums are curious but harmless. She asked if they carry rabies. I said Australia doesn't have rabies. She said that's impossible because all wild mammals carry rabies. I explained Australia is rabies-free due to island isolation. She didn't believe me. She said her doctor told her to avoid wild animals abroad because of rabies risk. I told her doctor was giving general advice, but Australia is an exception. She asked what diseases possums do carry. I said they can have parasites, but aren't dangerous to humans if you don't touch them. She wanted it removed immediately. I explained we don't remove native wildlife unless it's inside the room. She said it might come inside. I asked if the door was closed. Yes, then it won't come inside. She asked if possums can open doors. No. She asked if I was sure. Very sure. She said it was making aggressive noises. I told her possums hiss when startled but won't attack. She asked how I knew it wouldn't attack. I said because I've lived in Australia for 30 years and possums don't attack humans. She wanted to switch rooms. We were fully booked. She asked for a refund because the room was unsafe due to wildlife proximity. I offered to send someone to shoo it away. She accepted. Security went up, clapped twice, and the possum left. She called back 10 minutes later. It had returned. We stopped answering her calls after midnight. In the morning, she complained to management that Australian hotels have inadequate animal control standards. The possum lived in that tree. It wasn't going anywhere. I was working at Sydney Airport Customs when an American family arrived with 12 checked bags. Standard questions: purpose of visit, duration, anything to declare. The father said they had survival supplies. I asked him to clarify. He opened a bag. Inside, 3 snakebite kits, a venom extractor, 2 tourniquets, industrial-strength insect repellent, a field guide to Australian venomous creatures, leather gloves rated for reptile handling, and 4 cans of bear spray. I told him bear spray is illegal in Australia. He said it's for crocodiles. I explained that's not how crocodile safety works, and also bear spray is still illegal regardless of intended use. He argued that it's a defensive tool. I said it's classified as a weapon here. He asked what Australians use for crocodile defense. I said common sense and staying out of crocodile habitats. He said that's not a real plan. I asked where he was planning to go. He said Sydney, Melbourne, and maybe the Gold Coast. I told him there are no crocodiles in any of those places. He said he'd read about saltwater crocodiles in Australia. I said yes, in far northern Australia, nowhere near his itinerary. He insisted on keeping the bear spray for emergencies. I confiscated it. He asked for a receipt. I gave him one. He asked if he could pick it up when leaving Australia. No, it would be destroyed. He said that's theft. I explained import laws don't work that way. His wife asked if the snakebite kits were okay. I said yes, but unnecessary. She said they paid $200 for them. I told her she wasted $200. The daughter asked if Australian hospitals accept American health insurance. I said she'd need to check with her provider. The father asked if ambulances in Australia are free like in Europe. I said no, they're expensive. He looked vindicated. He said that's why the survival supplies were necessary. I told him a travel insurance policy would have been cheaper than bear spray. He disagreed. We spent 40 minutes going through their bags. They had enough first aid supplies to treat a small battalion. The tourniquet was medical grade. The father said he watched a YouTube video on field amputations. I did not want to know why. They finally cleared customs. 3 weeks later, they left Australia without using a single item from their survival kit. The father later posted on travel forums that Australia isn't as dangerous as advertised, but tourists should still come prepared. His packing list had 83 items. Number 1 was bear spray. If you found yourself shaking your head through that, welcome to the rational side of the internet. I track these cultural contradictions full-time, so you don't have to. Subscribing doesn't help me. It helps you catch the next one before it goes viral. Look, Australians grow up with wildlife. We learn early what's dangerous and what's just scary looking. Most of our wildlife wants nothing to do with humans. But every month, American tourists arrive convinced they're entering a death zone. They buy survival gear for suburban hotels. They panic over geckos. They ask about anti-venom at pharmacies like they're buying aspirin. And somewhere right now, another American is Googling, "Can kangaroos sense fear?" while staying in downtown Sydney where the closest kangaroo is in a zoo 40 kilometers away.